The purpose of this video is to explain the best ways to use the Continental layouts, American Continental and American Continental ATA format. Here is a list of items I wanted this video to explain. Choosing bunker or ATA format, setting the 17-yard distance, setting target launch to first visible, choosing between target comes to shooter or move around the room, changing the vertical range of the targets, changing and checking the launch speed, keeping wide targets on the shooting wall. Choosing between bunker and ATA format. When you go into the layouts under trap, you will find American Continental ATA format and American Continental. The American Continental is set up to operate in bunker format, and by that I mean the movement of shooters within a squad is after every target the shooter moves to the next station to his right, just like they do in bunker trap. In the ATA format, it is done like ATA shooters do, which is they stay on the same station for 5 targets, and then they move to the right 1 station, shoot another 5 targets, and move. So in the beginning, when you're deciding which of these 2 formats you want to shoot in, you're really picking between the movement that you have around your floor, which is either you are moving every time you shoot a target or every 6th time you shoot a target. Now I'm going to select the layout I want, which is American Continental, because I want the bunker movement. Double click on it. When that layout comes in, I then want to make sure that it's set for standing on the 17-yard line. If I look up here in this window, notice it says 16, and this is based upon an individual shooter. So I'm going to come in here, and Tom is the individual shooter. I'm going to come down to the pencil, and in the pencil here under ATA handicap, I'm going to change this from 16 yards to 17 yards. Now if you're shooting in a squad, you're going to want to change all of the people shooting in a squad so that they are defaulted to 17 yards. And that's how simple it is to get people on the 17-yard line. Next, we are going to change the launch mode. We come up to Setup, come down to System Configuration, and then come down to the lower left-hand corner and click on Advanced. Notice up here, one of the things you normally choose is the laser start position. Right now it's set in launch position, which means that the target starts from the actual point that is being launched, such as from the trap arm. Now in this case, what we want to do, because of the fact that we have a lot of vertical changes in target trajectories, there was another mode put in here that allows that to work properly. And so I'm going to click on launch position, and notice I can pick out something else called first visible position. So that's all you want to do, is change that to first visible position. Now, how is that going to alter how your DryFire units in comparison to what you've seen in the past? In the past, if you're shooting ATA trap targets and you're in the launch position, DryFire points the head directly at where the trap arm is inside of the trap house. When you call pull, the head begins to move, but we keep the laser turned off until we know that the head is moved far enough so that the target would become visible outside of the trap house. First visible, actually the head goes to the point right at the edge of the trap house where it would become visible, and when you call pull, it starts at that point and moves on through the trajectory from there. So one of the things that you're probably going to want to do, and that is you're going to probably want to put some sort of a visual barrier between your eyes and the actual DryFire unit. Because if you don't, you will be able to look at the heads and where they're positioned and determine whether you're going to get a left going target, a straight target, or a right target. But the reason for this is the proper way when you have vertical differences in launch targets to run the DryFire. So now you know how to set it to first visible. Next, you're going to need to make a decision as to whether you want to shoot these targets in target comes to shooter mode or move around the room. Let me try and explain what your choices are, and I'll give you my opinion. Looking at this table, we find that Continentals has some extremely angular targets that it shoots. From Station 1, you may find a left-hand going target as strong as 66.5 degrees, and the right-hand target could be 23.5 degrees. On Station number 2, the angles vary from 55.75 degrees to the left to 34.25 degrees to the right. In Station number 3, you see 45-degree angles to the left and 45-degree angles to the right. On Station 4, you see 34.25 degrees targets to the left and 55.75 degree targets going to the right. And finally on Station 5, you find 23.5 degree targets going to the left and 66.5 degree targets going to the right. Now my point in this is that when you're shooting ATA targets and you're only dealing with a total of 34 degrees left or right, it's important to you when you're standing on the station to know where the target can go. However, it's my perspective in Continentals that the range of targets is so wide that there's very little advantage to know prior to the target release positionally whether you're on Station 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you feel that that's important, then I'm going to recommend that you implement move around the room. And if you feel that that's not very significant to you, then I would use target comes to shooter. And in a moment, I'm going to explain how in target comes to shooter, there are some advantages of keeping the targets on the wall. And after you make your decision, you're going to go ahead and select that choice. Notice here that when the layout comes in for the first time, it always comes in a default mode of target comes to shooter, and you can also tell that because the shooter is only going to be in one position. Now if you want to change that, you're going to go to Configure Room and Anchor Points, and in this Configure Room dialog box you're going to come to the top window and click, and you're going to pick, in this case I would pick out the move around the room prioritized anchor alignment. And then after doing that, you're going to go through the normal process of aligning your laser to that spot on the wall that DryFire depicts. And in this video, I'm not going to go through that aspect. Now let's look at the control you have of both the vertical range of heights of targets and the speed that the target is launched at. I'm going to go on up to Setup. I'm going to come down to ATA Trap Settings. And this opens up a window in which you have control of the target speed, the target angles, and the target height. It has been defaulted to fit the normal requirements of Continentals, and that is a trap angle varying between 45 degrees to the left and 45 degrees to the right, that the speed of the target ranges between 50 and 54 miles per hour, and that's controlled by the throwing distance, and the range of vertical height of the target ranging between 4.5 feet at the intermediate point, which is 10 yards out in front of the trap house, and 13.5 feet high at the intermediate point. Now if you're a shooter and one of the things that you're struggling with is the low-level targets, and so you want to home in on practicing mostly the low-level targets for a while, all you'd have to do here would be go to maximum height, and let's for instance change this to 7 feet. Now when you go back and launch targets, you're only going to see a spread of as low as 4.5 feet at the intermediate point and as high as 7 feet at the intermediate point. So I won't labor this point. You see that you can have whatever range of heights that you would like to practice, and then when you are done and you want to go back to the normal, all you have to do is click on defaults, say yes that you want the defaults. Now you will have to come back up here and come back down and pull that up, but you'll notice it's back to the 13.5 feet vertically. Now let's take a look at how do I control the launch speed if you are interested in targets that are different than 50 to 54 miles per hour. Now think about what you have to do at one of these continental ranges in order to make a wobble trap throw targets faster. You have to tighten the spring. And so what we're doing here by changing the throwing distance, for instance in ATA targets the throwing distance is 50 yards. And at 50 yards the typical launch speed is somewhere in the vicinity of 42 to 43 miles per hour. So by having a longer throwing distance here, DryFire has to launch the targets faster. At this 68, I've tried this and we're launching somewhere between 50 and 54 miles per hour. And here's how you can check that. We're going to go ahead and click on OK. And then we're going to go up and I'm going to pick, for instance, a Station 3 target. And then I'm going to go into the stop motion logic by clicking on Target Tools. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a time in the trajectory window here that represents just as the target gets going. So let me type in 0.02. So 2/100ths of a second off of the trap arm, and DryFire is saying down here in the information block that the target is going 53.82 miles per hour. So anytime that if you want different ranges of speeds, change the throwing distance and then come back here and launch a target using Target Tools. And again, I'm suggesting like 0.02 as the point you want to see it, because for instance, as this is more like 1 second down the trajectory, notice here that at 1 second down the trajectory, the target is now going 39.88 miles per hour. And since you're interested in the launch speed, because that's what the rules and the Continentals are all about, type in 0.02. That gets you right at the very beginning, just about the time the target is visible above the trap house. And in this case, it's going 53.82 miles per hour. Because these Continental targets are so angular, the target going to the left can be 66.5 degrees. That means that the target transitions from the center of your canvas to the edge very, very quickly, and it may be so quick that you can't even shoot at it. If you want to be able to get a little bit more of that trajectory on your wall, then the technique would be to move closer to the wall. So come up to your DryFire system configuration and go here to the top window where you're telling it how far you are standing from the wall. And in this case, I'm saying 12 feet back. You might decide to come up here and go 8 feet back, 96 inches. And then when you do that, basically the trajectories will not get off your wall near as quickly. So that's one technique, and that technique will work whether you're doing move around the room or whether you're doing target comes to shooter. And the final thing only works for target comes to shooter. And that is, you can come down here to tell DryFire how much wall you have to the left and the right of center. And what you're really, if you make this as big as it can be made, which is 240 inches, what you're telling DryFire is, okay, I understand that my canvas is only a certain width, but don't turn the laser light off when it gets to the edge of the canvas. Leave it on the laser light on until it gets what could be 240 inches to the left. And so that's a second technique that will work in target comes to shooter, but it will not work and move around the room because it's going to change the positions where it says you should be standing if you put these radically big numbers in. Well, that's a lot of information, and I hope I've helped you. And that's it from DryFire Bob.